or encyclopedia would prove that neither the Hebrew language, the Greek language, nor the Latin language have any characters or letters in their alphabet that would produce the sound that is made by this letter J. Neither was there a letter J in the English language until some 1400 years after the Messiah's death. Therefore, such names as Jesus and Jehovah are impossible renderings for the true and original name of our Father and his Son. Christ is a title just like Lord and God. Yahweh is pure spirit, and in this state he is incomprehensible, inscrutable, and indiscernible. He is the ultimate source, limits, and bounds of everything. We have Yahweh in his pure spirit state symbolized on this chart as a cloud. Yahweh is not a cloud. He merely chose a cloud to symbolize himself because a cloud has no particular or descriptive shape and form. We have drawn this cloud all around the edges of this chart to show you that everything on this chart is within the cloud. In like manner, everything in the universe abides within the pure spirit state of Yahweh. Yahweh, knowing that man could not perceive of him in this pure spirit state, took on a shape and form right within himself as Elohim. This is the Word or Son, a superincorporeal being that is having the shape and form of a man, but without flesh and blood. This form could only be seen in divine visions and understood in divine revelations. Later on, this self-same spirit manifest himself in a physical body and walked the earth plane as Yahshua the Messiah, whom the world calls Jesus Christ. Now there is only one name given unto salvation, and we must know that name. So the simple yet intelligent question that we should ask ourselves is, what is the name of the Savior during the time that he walked the earth plane? A further understanding of this name and title may be had by reading the preface of the Holy Name Bible. Also at this school, we teach by the divine pattern of the universe. It is called the divine pattern because it's Yahweh's pattern. After Yahweh led the children of Israel out of Egypt, he called Moses atop Mount Sinai and showed him this tabernacle pattern in a vision. Yahweh instructed Moses to build one exactly like it in the wilderness of Sinai. This pattern contains a most holy place, a holy place, and a court round about. These three compartments make up the one tabernacle pattern. In this school, we show proof that everything in the universe is made and operates according to the structure and the function of this tabernacle pattern, and that nothing escapes this pattern. The 10 primary aims and objectives of the Institute are as follows. First, to help you find and know Yahweh our Elohim as he really is and actually exists. 2, to form a nucleus of universal brotherhood of humanity in Yahshua the Messiah without distinction of race, nationality, creed, sex, caste, or color. 3, to investigate the unexplained spirit law or so-called law of nature and the powers latent in man. 4, to encourage and promote the study of the scriptures, comparative religions, psychology, philosophy, and modern practical and occult science. 5th, to extirpate current superstition, skepticism, and ignorance. 6, to learn, know, and understand the operation of Yahweh's eternal purpose through the dispensations and ages. 7, to discern and avoid being deceived by Lucifer, the serpent, the devil, the dragon, or Satan and his demons, operating the mystery of iniquity on earth through the dispensations of time. 8, to earnestly contend for the common salvation and faith which was once delivered unto the sons or children of Yahweh. 9, to make known that Yahweh, from the beginning ordained that there is no other name given among men whereby man can be saved, saving the name of Yahshua the Messiah. 10. To inherit eternal life now in the kingdom of Yahshua the Messiah, with the hope of immortal glorification in the new earth state. Our watchword is peace, and our slogan is speak the truth. We'll begin this evening with a prayer by Dr. Diane Imler, and then that will be followed by a scripture lesson to be read by Andrea.
If we could all bow our hearts and minds and thank Yahweh for bringing us together once again and allowing us to learn of your great purpose and plan. We are at the end of an age where the Bible says only scarcely a few shall be saved. And we want to be counted in that number. We want to stay strong. We want to continue to want to learn. We have to continue our desire to conform to his image. With all these things, we want to thank you for all that you have done for us, which is beyond measure. We ask these things in the name of Yahshua the Messiah. Let us all say, Hallelujah.
All right. Deuteronomy 32. Give ear, O you heavens, and I will speak, and hear, O earth, the words of my mouth. My doctrine shall drop as the rain, my speech shall distill as the dew, as the small rain upon the tender herb, and as the showers upon the grass. Because I will publish the name of Yahweh. Ascribe ye greatness unto our El. He is the rock, his work is perfect, for all his ways are judgment. An Elohim of truth and without iniquity. Just and right is he. They have corrupted themselves. Their spot is not the spot of his children. They are a perverse and crooked generation. Do ye thus require Yahweh, O foolish people and unwise? Is he not thy father that hath bought thee? Hath he not made thee and established thee? Remember the days of old. Consider the years of many generations. Ask thy father, and he will show thee. Thy elders, and they will tell thee. When the Most High divided to the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel. For Yahweh's portion is his people. Jacob is the lot of his inheritance. He found him in a desert land and in the waste howling wilderness. He led him about, he instructed him. He kept him as the apple of his eye. As an eagle stirreth up her nest, fluttereth over her young, spreadeth abroad her wings, taketh them, beareth them on her wings. So Yahweh alone did lead him, and there was no strange Elohim with him. He made him ride on the high places of the earth, that he might eat the increase of the fields. And he made him to suck honey out of the rock, and oil out of the flinty rock, butter of kine and milk of sheep, with fat of lambs and rams of the breed of Bashan, and goats, with the fat of kidneys of wheat, and thou didst drink the pure blood of the grape. But Jeshurun waxed fat and kicked. Thou art waxen fat, thou art grown thick, thou art covered with fatness, Then he forsook Yahweh which made him, and lightly esteemed the rock of his salvation. They provoked him to jealousy with strange gods. With abominations provoked they him to anger. They sacrificed unto devils, not unto Yahweh, to gods whom they knew not, to new gods that came newly up, who your fathers feared not. Of the rock that begat thee thou art unmindful, and hast forgotten Elohim that formed thee. And when Yahweh saw it, he abhorred them, because of the provoking of his sons and of his daughters. And he said, I will hide my face from them, I will see what their end shall be. For they are a very froward generation, children in whom is no faith. They have moved me to jealousy with that which is not Elohim. They have provoked me to anger with their vanities, and I will move them to jealousy with those which are not a people. I will provoke them to anger with a foolish nation. For a fire is kindled in mine anger, and shall burn unto the lowest hell, and shall consume the earth with her increase, and set on fire the foundations of the mountains. I will heap mischiefs upon them, I will spend my arrows upon them. They shall be burnt with hunger and devoured with the burning heat, and with bitter destruction. I will also send the teeth of the beast upon them, with the poison of serpents of the dust. The sword without and terror within shall destroy both the young man and the virgin, the suckling also with the man of gray hairs. I said I would scatter them into corners. I would make the remembrance of them to cease from among men. Were it not that I feared the wrath of the enemy, lest their adversaries should behave themselves strangely, and lest they should say, Our hand is high, and Yahweh hath not done all this. For they are a nation void of counsel, neither is there any understanding in them. Oh, that they were wise, that they understood this, how they would consider their latter end. How should one chase 1,000, and two put 10,000 to flight, except their rock had sold them, and Yahweh had shut them up? For their rock is not as our rock, even our enemies themselves being judges. For their vine is the vine of Sodom, and of the fields of Gomorrah. Their grapes are grapes of gall, and their clusters are bitter. Their wine is the poison of dragons, and the cruel venom of asps. Is not this laid up in store with me, and sealed up upon my treasures? To me belongeth vengeance and recompense. Their foot shall slide in due time. For the day of their calamity is at hand, and the things that shall come upon them make haste. For Yahweh shall judge his people, and repent himself for his servants. When he seeth that their power is gone, and there is none shut up or left, and he shall say, Where are their gods, their rock in whom they trusted, which did eat the fat of their sacrifices, and drank the wine of their drink offerings? Let them rise up and help you, and be your protection. See now that I, even I, he, and there is no God with me. I kill and I make alive. I wound and I heal. Neither is there any that can deliver out of my hand. For I lift up my hand to heaven, and I say, I live forever. If I whet my glittering sword, and my hand take hold on judgment, I will render vengeance to mine enemies, and will reward them that hate me. I will make mine arrows drunk with blood, and my sword shall devour flesh, and that with the blood of the slain and of the captives, from the beginning of revenges upon the enemy. Rejoice, O ye nations, with his people, for he will avenge the blood of his servants, and will render vengeance to his adversaries, and will be merciful unto his land and to his people. And Moses came and spake all the words of this song in the ears of the people, he and Joshua the son of Nun. And Moses made an end of speaking all these words to Israel. And he said unto them, Set your hearts unto all the words which I testify among you this day, which you shall command your children to observe to do all the words of this law. For it is not a vain thing for you, because it is your life. And through this thing you shall prolong your days in the land, whither you go over Jordan to possess it. And Yahweh spake unto Moses that selfsame day, saying, Get thee up into this mountain, Abram, unto the Mount Nebo, which is in the land of Moab, that is over against Jericho, and behold, the land of Canaan, which I gave unto the children of Israel for a possession. And die in the mount whither thou goest up, and be gathered unto thy people, as Aaron thy brother died in the Mount Hor, and was gathered unto his people, because you trespassed against me amongst the children of Israel at the waters of Meribah Kadesh in the wilderness of Zin, because you sanctified me not in the midst of the children of Israel. Yet thou shalt see the land before thee, but thou shalt not go thither unto the land which I give the children of Israel.
Thank you, Andrea. Again, I would like to welcome all of our members tonight and our online viewers. For information about the Oceanside class, or for questions arising from an Oceanside class broadcast lecture, please email us at oceansideclassidmr@gmail.com, or leave a voicemail or text message at 442-264-7388. Please limit your questions to items directly discussed during one of our lectures, and include the class date and speaker with your question. Most questions will be answered at future classes. Our first speaker this evening will be Dr. Jonathan Jordan. Dr. Jonathan Villanueva. It's one of my other friends. Hi, Jonathan, if you're watching. Jonathan Villanueva.
Jonathan was like, what?
I was like, sure. Okay.
Oh, here, you can have this too.
I'll be quick. Good evening.
Good evening.
I don't have much in my mind. It's just, I guess I'll just say it's nice to come to class and finally turn off, everything that's going on out there.
Yeah.
Yes, it feels nice to just finally have your mind relax. 'Cause, I came in the door and I'm just like, all right, now I'm here, and then it's like I got these things rushing through your mind. I'm just trying to, focus on class and scripture reading. But just want to say I'm glad to be here. I'm just looking forward to keep coming and learning. With that, I'll say hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Thank you, Jonathan Villanueva. Our next speaker this evening will be Dr. Diane Emler.
Thanks. Hi, everybody.
Hello. Diane.
I thought, oh, did someone adopt Jonathan? I got it.
Somebody in the San Diego class.
All right. Well, we're here. I'm glad I'm here. Hopefully you are as well. I'd like to go over, let's just start in Acts, the 17th chapter, pick it up like 23, 24.
Acts 17 and 22. Then Paul stood in the midst of Mars Hill and said, Ye men of Athens, I perceive that in all things you are too superstitious.
And in the margin, from superstitious, many Bibles pick up religious.
This is very religious, yes.
Yes, pick them up as being very religious. And they were the intellectuals at the time. there in Athens, you know, was considered the cradle of, you know, thinking, Aristotle and all of the big thinkers. I can't think of any of the big thinkers. Socrates, thank you. So they were very intellectual. So go ahead, Jerry.
For as I passed by and beheld your devotions, I found an altar with this inscription, to the unknown God.
Now, as was the custom of the people, in a community where they worshiped so many different gods, they put up statues for all of the different gods, devotions, where people could go and pray and offer sacrifices, whatever they did. So in the midst of all of these tributes to all of these different gods, there was one that stood out. And the one that stood out was to the unknown God. See? Now, every single one of those gods had a name. See? And the unknown was unknown. See? And Paul said, this is the one that I want to tell you about. The one that you know nothing about. And the one where no one is using his name. See? Pick it up there, Jerry.
For as I passed by and beheld your devotions, I found an altar with this inscription, to the unknown God, whom therefore ye ignorantly worship, him declare I unto you.
Now, how could you worship somebody smartly if you don't know anything about them? So he's saying you ignorantly worship. And what you should be able to see is that for you to worship properly, you need to know something. See? You can't venerate a president or you know, some idol or a pop star or Albert Einstein, any famous person, and do any kind of justice if you don't know anything about them. Not even their name. See? So hang on to that and just run over and get me John 4:24.
John 4:24. Yahweh is spirit.
Now, Yahweh, which as the moderator told you, is really the name of the Father. And up until just a couple of years ago, it was used in Catholic masses. I've been to weddings where they use the name of Yahweh. And it was in different songs. And then the Catholic Church decided that they would remove the name of Yahweh from all of their services and from all of their songs because they said that it would be offensive to the Jews. Well, I think believing in a Messiah is pretty offensive to a Jew. But also, this name of Yahweh was hidden by the Hebrews pretty much right after it was given, very soon afterwards. And it was taken out of the text because the priests were afraid, this was their reasoning, that the priests said that so that you don't dishonor the name of Yahweh, we're going to take it out of the Bible or out of the Torah, and then that way at least there's one commandment you've kept. But the reality is the commandment says do not take the name of not God and Lord, those are only titles, but the name of Yahweh in vain. And the word vain means to bring to naught or to be empty. See? So how else do you bring a name to mean nothing, do you understand, other than just pull it out of all the literatures? And so by pulling it out of the Torah, then they brought it to naught, or they brought it to nothing, or they made it empty. Understand? And now the Catholics have done the same thing. See? So the name of the Father is Yahweh. See? Now read what you have here in John 4:24.
Yahweh is spirit.
Now Yahweh is spirit. Read.
And they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth.
It cannot be ignorantly worshipped, as Paul was talking about, but you have to worship him in spirit and in truth. Well, the truth of the matter is his name is Yahweh. See? So right away, if you're not using his name, then you're not worshiping in truth.
Right. Right.
Now, Yahweh is spirit and has to be worshipped in spirit.
Right.
Now, what in the world does that mean? Understand? We're used to going to church. If you're a Roman Catholic, you're sitting, you're kneeling, you're sitting, you're kneeling, you're lighting candles. If you were brought up a Presbyterian like I was, you sat, you listened to the choirs, there was like a 10-minute service and the rest were announcements and choirs. That was it. Understand? Now, if you were a Lutheran, like my husband, they tried to get him smart and send him to confirmation classes, but he quit. See? My point is, to properly worship, you must worship in spirit and in truth. And this kind of stuff, or getting physically water baptized, or eating the Eucharist, or eating Lord's Suppers, or putting money in the collection plate, all of those are physical ways of worship. You have to do something physical. It's a physical way of worship. And he says that he has to be worshiped. He wants to be worshiped in spirit and in truth because he is spirit. So if you're going to worship spirit, you better figure out what spirit is and how do I spiritually worship. Does that make any sense? See? Now, go back over to Acts.
Acts 18, and I'll just pick up the end of 23. To the unknown God, whom therefore ye ignorantly worship.
Yes, and the founder told us that they put up that statue just to kind of cover their behinds, because it was like, well, we have all these statues. Sounds like a sneeze when I say it, but and we have all of these statues to all of these different gods, yet in case we missed any, we better erect something to the unknown God.
Right.
One that we don't know anything about, but in case something we don't know about ends up to be the real thing, then we better put up a statue so that he'll like us.
Exactly.
He won't kill us. You understand? And that's what people are afraid of.
Right.
I want to worship God so he doesn't send me to hell. So that if you are a Christian and believe in heaven and hell, now a lot of people don't believe in heaven or hell, but if you believe in heaven or hell, you go to church and try to be a good person because you don't want him to kill you and send you to hell. Bottom line. So they know nothing about the God or the Elohim that Paul is going to talk about. You understand? Go ahead.
To the unknown God, whom therefore ye ignorantly worship, him declare I unto you.
Now I'm going to declare this one you know nothing about. And the world knows nothing about Yahweh. They won't even use his name. Your book reads he has to be worshipped in spirit, and yet they got you doing everything physical possible in the services. And then if you don't go out and work for the poor or do charitable work or help neighbors or send money to missionaries, if you don't do something like that, you understand, then you're not a good Christian. My point is, once again, those are all physical things. They know nothing about spirit. And we would know nothing about spirit if it wasn't that our founder, Henry Clifford Kinley, had a divine vision and revelation. Now that's hard to swallow. It was hard for me to swallow. And I would have believed anything back then. I was pretty, yeah, whatever. But my point is that you can know something about spirit. So go ahead and read.
Yahweh that made the world and all things therein, seeing that he is ruler of heaven and earth, dwelleth not in temples made with hands.
Nah, he's not down in your church. He's not in the back. Do you understand? In a box. They call it Tabernacle, and God is there when the light's on. Not happening. Read.
Neither is worshipped with men's hands as though he needed anything.
Yeah, he doesn't need you to make a sign of the cross when he knows your heart and mind. You can be up there just as filthy as you can be on the inside. And as Dennis often points out, the mafia, who just goes out and kills people, they've had these in movies where while they're killing people, some kids getting baptized and they're all in there being all holy and pious. You can stand up there and be a liar and a murderer and a thief and do this and put holy water on your head and suddenly you're okay. It doesn't cut it. And in Hebrews it talks about this. There's an old covenant and a new covenant. And the old covenant, with all of the physical ways of worship, just does not do the trick, folks. It cannot cleanse or clean your conscience. And you know that's true. You know that there's times when you've done something and nobody else knows.
Yep.
And you'll lay awake at night over that thing. Why? Because your conscience is bothering you. See? Well, you know that getting up in the morning and taking a shower isn't going to help your conscience. Well, then why do you think getting up in front of a church and get sprinkled with water is going to clean you up or clean your conscience? It's ridiculous.
Right.
All you have to do is stop and think about it. Just for a minute. See? Go ahead.
Neither is worship with men's hands as though he needed anything, seeing he giveth to all life and breath and all things.
He gives to all of us life and breath in all things. We need him. He didn't write down there after the day of Pentecost, P.S., make sure that Diane Thornton Emler, do you understand, is going to be okay because she was good in her former life. No, we're not mentioned. See? Go on.
And hath made of one man, King James blood, all nations of men for to dwell on all the face of the earth, and have determined the times before appointed and the bounds of their habitation.
Mm-hmm.
That they should seek Yahweh, if haply they might feel after him and find him, though he be not far from every one of us.
Read.
For in him we live and move and have our being.
Now that, when I first heard that, just totally knocked my socks off.
Me too.
Now I got to show you this. I'm going to draw up here. That's a cloud. That's a cloud.
Good cloud.
Is it a good cloud? Well, wait a minute. All right. This cloud is representing spirit. It represents Yahweh, which we'll put Father. Now, I didn't just decide on doing a cloud. And I want you to recognize that when the children of Israel came up out of Egypt, they were following a cloud.
Mm-hmm.
See? And you can read about that in Exodus. That when they came up, they followed a cloud, and in that cloud was Elohim. When they came into the wilderness of Sinai, that cloud that led them out came up here on top of Mount Sinai, and it became a burning cloud or burning inferno. So that's why I put up a cloud. Now this cloud is the Father, and we read in John 4:24 that he is spirit. And he abides, is Isaiah 57. Let me get it. I have too many things.
What are you looking for?
50, yes. Yes, that is what I want.
Isaiah 57 and 15.
All right, we're talking about this spirit or Yahweh. Read.
For thus saith the high and lofty one.
That is him. Read.
That inhabits eternity.
Now, where does he live?
Eternity.
Eternity. So this is eternity. No beginning, no end. Understand? As the founder used to say, you've never gotten outside of him to be able to look back at him and get a description. See? Now, we read here that we live and move and have our being right within him.
Yes.
You understand? So that we are abiding within Yahweh.
Right.
We are abiding within Spirit.
Right.
We are abiding within eternity. Now that takes a while to sink in. Understand? That we live in him. He lives in eternity. He is Spirit, and that's where we find ourselves. See? Now, real quick, just to finish this up, go to Exodus 24. Nine, that's it?
Yeah.
Ready?
Yep.
Exodus 24:9. Then went up Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel.
Now, we're on this chart. Israel had left Egypt, come through the divided waters of the Red Sea. That cloud, as we talked about, that led them up out of Egypt, came here and settled on top of Mount Sinai, and they were instructed not to touch that mountain. For if they were touched that mountain, they were to be killed. Mm-hmm. As my husband likes to say, big rocks were thrown at their heads. Mm-hmm.
I like the visual.
He likes the visual. So that they got rocked, okay? So they were rocked to death. Now, so when he came up here, nobody was supposed to touch this mountain, but under special invitation, Aaron, which was Moses' brother, Nadab and Abihu, his two sons, and the 70 elders of Israel came to the midpoint of this mountain and looked up there, and they saw something. Now go ahead and read.
And then went up Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel. And they saw the Elohim of Israel. And there was under his feet, as it were, a paved work of a sapphire stone, and as it were the body of heaven in his clearness.
Now I want you to recognize the fact that they're seeing this within a fiery cloud. And that this body that they saw up here on top of Mount Sinai was not a flesh and blood body. This was a body of heaven. It was a heavenly body. And no matter how much weight I lose, if I suck and talk and just get gorgeous, I'm never going to have a heavenly body. Not like this. You understand? It was different than we were. Go ahead and read.
And upon the nobles of the children of Israel he laid not his hand. Also they saw Elohim and did eat and drink.
So they described him of having hands, feet, and a body, but a body of heaven in its clearness. Now when Moses went up into the cloud, top of the mountain, he was given a vision. See? And he saw, get me 25, 8, and 9, and 40. Exodus.
25, 8, and 9. And let them make me a sanctuary.
So right here, Yahweh Elohim, this shape and form, told Moses, let them, meaning the children of Israel, make me a sanctuary. Read.
that I may dwell among them.
Read.
According to all that I show thee, after the pattern of the tabernacle, and the pattern of all the instruments thereof, even so shall you make it.
So here, I want you to build in the wilderness of Sinai the tabernacle that you saw up here on top of Mount Sinai. Exactly. Don't change it. And the reason why it's so important not to change it is because the true tabernacle is this shape and form. That Moses, Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu saw and Moses communed with, that heavenly body, and it's referred to, here, let me do this. I have to remember how we used to. That's a little dot, man. That's supposed to show.
Incorporeal shape and form.
This is incorporeal. As opposed to spirit. And you and me, we're physical or corporeal. See? Now, this shape and form, this incorporeal heavenly body, in John 1:1 is referred to as the Word of Yahweh. In Christianity, you would call it either God or Lord. When I went to church, I didn't know there was a difference between Lord and God. I just thought you said God when you felt like it,
Me too.
and the Lord when you felt like
Yeah.
it. And if you were like feeling extra holy, you might say the Lord God. And that was, do you understand? But there is a difference. In my time, we're not going to be able to explain it all, but you stick in here and it will be explained. Now, this was also referred to as Elohim, which is a Hebrew plural form, meaning God. You understand? But it's important because this form was both masculine and feminine. See? Now, so we've got Yahweh Spirit, Yahweh Elohim of the Word is incorporeal, and then here's you and I, corporeal. Give me John 1:1 real quick and then drop
John
down to
1:1.
14.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Yahweh, and the Word was Yahweh.
Yes.
The same was in the beginning with Yahweh. All things were made by Him, and without Him was not anything made that was made.
Now, drop down to 14.
14. And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us.
Now, the Word was made flesh. Sorry, guys. The Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld His glory. And if you keep reading there, you're going to see that the one they're talking about is the Messiah. So His name is not Jesus. There's no J, Hebrew, Greek, or Latin. no J in our language until 450 years ago or something like that. So his name couldn't have been Jesus. He came in his father's name, Yah, the masculine portion of the name, and Shua in conjunction with Yah means Yahweh is salvation, aid, or deliverance. All right? So that is his name. Now, what I've just kind of drawn out here, Christians call it the Godhead, or you'll hear in here supernal nature. All right. Now, I want to go back up here, and I want you to know a little bit about this spirit, Yahweh. Now, spirit isn't nothing. Understand? Science right now is grappling with finding out whether there really is a nothing. That kind of goes beyond my sensibilities. I'm too linear to really grasp all that. But I know in the Roman Catholic faith, they believe that God created the universe from nothing. And scientists now are saying there really is no nothing. You understand? There's something. Unless it's, they have explanations. They go much further with it. But my point is this, that Yahweh is something. He is made up of divine attributes. And these attributes are intelligence, knowledge, wisdom, beauty, love, justice, foundation, power, and strength. And all of those attributes can be found in your Bible attributed to the Father or to Yahweh. Now, we're not going to take the time to pull all of these, but this is what he is. And when these attributes come into an organized shape and form, do you understand? That is the Son. And when that Son, firstborn, comes in the flesh, that is the Holy Spirit. So, Yahweh, divine attributes. Yahweh Elohim and Yahshua. Now remember, within Yahweh, he abides within eternity. See? And what I want to do is go back over to Exodus 24, 8 and 9, and then we'll just read 25:40 again.
Ready?
Yep.
Exodus 24, 9 and 10, I think, is what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Then went up Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel.
Read.
And they saw the Elohim of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And there was under his feet, as it were, a paved work of a sapphire stone.
So we're seeing a sapphire stone and feet. Go ahead.
And as it were, the body of heaven in his clearness.
Mm-hmm.
And upon the nobles of the children of Israel, he laid not his hand.
So he had hand, feet, and then we're going to read about the body. Read.
And also they saw Elohim and did eat and drink.
Right. So we have hands, feet, and a body on top of Mount Sinai, but this cloud was no longer a cloud. It was a burning inferno. So as you might imagine, when Moses went up there and walked into a burning cloud, Israel was told to wait here at Mount Sinai at the midpoint. Well, they didn't wait until he came back because they figured he's a goner. He's dead. He's left us alone. So they came back down off of the mountain, and the golden calf was built, and they gave this golden calf, which was a god down in Egypt, they gave that golden calf the credit for bringing them up out of Egypt. And then just to top it off, there was an orgy of sorts and lots of drinking. See? Now, when Moses heard the sound from the camp, and he came off of Mount Sinai, this action upset him so much that he threw down those tables of stone, do you understand, and broke them. That was the 10 Commandments that he broke. See? Now my time is up. See? But I want you to recognize that when Moses went up here into this burning cloud, he was actually entering into the realm of eternity. Now, I want you to appreciate that according to the time clock of everybody at the bottom of the mountain, he was up there for 40 days. Now, he didn't bring supplies with him. He didn't bring a sleeping bag and a Coleman stove so he could cook and, you know, supplies for a month. He just walked up there. See? And he survived without food and drink for 40 days. See? Who has ever been able to do that? You can go without eating, but drinking, I forget, it's a short period of time. A week or something? 3 days.
Or 5 days or something.
Yeah. It's a short period of time, and you have to drink. See? But when Moses was up here, he did not eat or drink. And I want you to recognize when he went up into this mountain, he went up to eternity. Just as much as when John was on the Isle of Patmos, do you understand? On top of an island is nothing more than a mountain in the ocean. And so he's at the top of the mountain here like Moses was. And he entered in, do you understand, that realm of eternity and had a vision, just like Moses had went into the realm of eternity and had a vision. So they both had the same experiences in eternity. See? Give me 10 minutes here. Get me Matthew 17. I need Ezekiel. Is it 9? Ezekiel 8. And you can pick that up at 1. What did I call so far?
Matthew 17, I'm not sure what verse you're looking for.
You can write it 1 and one more. Acts
Oh, and you said Ezekiel 8 and what?
1
In Acts.
and Acts. Hang with me here, guys. I have a new Bible and it's inconvenient for my hands. I'm just looking for Paul on his way to Damascus.
Oh, Acts.
12.
All right.
Did you find it?
Not yet.
Nine. 8 or
Okay.
9. Says conversion of Saul. Maybe it's
Yeah.
9. Yeah, Saul was breathing out threatenings. 9 and 1.
Yeah, so
And so
Acts, what,
9th chapter of Acts.
uh,
And we can start. I can start right at 1 and get that. part.
okay, so hang on to that.
Yeah.
Somebody also run over to Revelation. We'll get through these quickly, so.
What did you want first, Revelation? Or?
I want, where it's right 1 or 2, it's going to be
Oh.
1.
Yeah, it's 1.
1 in, Revelation 1 and 9.
Revelation 1 and 9. You ready?
Okay, no, I don't want that yet. Well, yes, I do, I'm sorry, and Revelation 1 and 9.
Revelation 1 and 9.
Now, and I'm going to interrupt you before you start. Now, I want you to see that Moses up here was on top of Mount Sinai, in the cloud, in the Father, which was eternity. We've read that while he was up there, he had a vision. He saw the Son of Man, or the Word of Yahweh, Yahweh Elohim. There also, he transfigured or transformed into an intangible tabernacle, which was later built here in the wilderness of Sinai. So that's what happened in Moses' vision. All right? Now, I've done this before, but I think it's important to do it again so that we can understand something about spirit and something about eternity. Go ahead, Ann.
I, John, who also am your brother and companion in tribulation and in the kingdom and patience of Yahshua the Messiah, was in the isle that is called Patmos, for the word of Yahweh and for the testimony of Yahshua the Messiah. I was in the Spirit on Yahweh's day.
Now, he was in the Spirit like Moses was in the Spirit. He was there on Yahweh's day, which is what day? The day of eternity.
Mm-hmm.
So here, Moses is up on a day of eternity, so is John. Read.
I was in the Spirit on Yahweh's day, and I heard behind me a great voice as of a trumpet, saying, I am Alpha and Omega, the first and the last.
Right.
And what thou seest write in a book,
Right.
and send it unto the 7 churches which are in Asia, unto Ephesus, unto Smyrna.
No, we don't need all that. We need to get down where he describes what he saw.
And I turned to see the voice that spake with me. And being turned, I saw 7 golden candlesticks.
Now, when he turned, he saw 7 golden candlesticks. Well, what do you have in the midst of these two but the 7 days of creation? Go ahead.
And in the middle of the 7 candlesticks,
In the midst or in the middle, which would be the 4th day, read.
one like unto the Son of Man.
One that was the Son of Man. And the 4th day of creation, the sun in the sky came in. Now, in the 4,000th year, Yahshua came in. So he's looking at Yahshua coming in on the 4th. See? Read.
And in the midst of the 7 candlesticks, one like unto the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to the foot, and girt about the paps with a golden girdle.
So around his paps was a golden girdle. Do you understand? And the vessels in the holy place and most holy place within this tabernacle. Now look it. I know that he's describing a man. But what I want you to see is that this man transformed or transfigured into a tabernacle. So that when John is describing the man, he's describing the tabernacle. So you've got the holy place, most holy place, vessels made of brass. Read.
His head and his hairs were white like wool.
Head and hairs, white like wool, and that was the cloud in the most holy place. That's the head. Read.
As white as snow, and his eyes were as a flame of fire.
And his eyes were as a flame of fire. And when the high priest went up here on the Day of Atonement and had a vision, there was the flash of the Shekinah or Shekinah, and that flash, do you understand, indicated that life had begun for Israel because sins were forgiven.
Right.
And you have in the birth of a baby, when the egg and the sperm get together, or right at conception, there is a flash of light. Why? That light is life. Go ahead.
And his feet like unto fine brass.
So down in the court roundabout, these vessels are made of brass. Read.
As if they burned in a furnace.
And that was this altar of sacrifice here. Read.
And his voice as the sound of many waters.
Uh-huh.
And he had in his right hand 7 stars.
In the right hand, 7 stars. And here in the tabernacle, you have the 7-branch golden candlestick. Read.
And out of his mouth went a sharp 2-edged sword.
Yes. Piercing asunder soul and spirit. And that, I think, is Thessalonians. Go ahead.
And his countenance was as the sun shineth in his strength.
So he looked like the sun and was the sun.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand? So that's what John saw up here on, do you understand, the Isle of Patmos. He's in the Spirit on the day of eternity, describing the Son of Man, or the Word of Yahweh, and he's describing the tabernacle. Do you understand? Now, we're just going to drop Ezekiel and go over to Matthew 17.
Matthew 17:1. And after 6 days Joshua taketh Peter, James, and John his brother, and bringeth them up into a high mountain apart,
That's pictured here. Read.
and was transfigured before them.
Now watch. You've got Peter, who was the elder. James and John were brothers. Just like you had Aaron, the elder, Nadab and Abihu, brothers. And they go up where? To a mountain. And they saw Joshua transfigure. Like they saw him transfigure here by Moses, and John saw him transfigure. Read.
And was transfigured before them, and his face did shine as the sun.
So that once again, you've got the sun shining. See? And I want you to recognize they're in that cloud.
Mm-hmm.
With the sun or the light in the cloud. Understand? And that, go ahead and read.
His face did shine as the sun, and his raiment was white as the light.
Just like John said. Read.
And behold, there appeared unto them Moses and Elijah.
Now
talking
Moses and Elijah, in your book, Christians call John the Baptist. He really was Elijah. And to this day, the Jews keep an empty seat waiting for Elijah, and Elijah came well over 2,000 years ago. They missed that. So here is, keep reading.
Then answered Peter and said unto Joshua, Master, it is good for us to be here. If thou wilt, let us make here 3 tabernacles.
Now, all of a sudden, Peter wants to make 3 tabernacles. So they're here in eternity. Do you understand? The Son, and there's a discussion about tabernacles. Now, go over and get Acts.
Acts 9:1. And Saul, yet breathing out threatenings and slaughter against the disciples of Yahweh, went to the high priest and desired of him letters to Damascus to the synagogues, that if he found any of this way, whether they were man or woman, he might bring them bound into Jerusalem.
Read.
And as he journeyed, he came near Damascus, and suddenly there shined round about a light from heaven.
Now, there was a light coming from heaven. Read.
And he fell to the earth and heard a voice saying to him, Saul, Saul, why persecute you me?
Why do you persecute me? Read.
And Saul said, Who are you, Master?
Now, who the heck are you? Here he sees a, do you understand, Moses had the wherewithal, or was given to him when he was at the burning bush, to ask, what is your name?
Right.
Now here is Paul, and the light shining from heaven, and he falls to his knees, and then the voice says, Saul, Saul, why persecuteth me? And he goes, who are you?
Right.
Would you have had that I wouldn't have turned around and go, who are you? Read.
And Joshua said, I am Joshua, who you persecute.
Now, I am Joshua. I am that Son of Man who you persecute. Read.
It is hard for you to kick against the pricks.
Oh, go on.
And he, trembling and astonished, said, Master, what will you have me to do?
Now, he's prostrate, on the ground, going, what will you have me to do? Read.
And Joshua said to him, Arise, go into the city, and it shall be told you what to do, what you must do.
Right.
And the men journeyed which were with him and stood speechless, hearing a voice, but seeing no man.
Now, the men that were with him, they heard a voice, but they saw no man. Just like the children of Israel at the base of Mount Sinai looked up and saw no similitude. But Moses saw a man. Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu saw a man. So the people around Paul didn't see anything, but they heard something. See? So here is Paul caught up in light. Do you understand? Talking to Joshua, who had already been crucified. Do you understand? Asking, what should I do? Now, I want you to recognize he's having a vision. He's the only one seeing it. Nobody else. See? So I got to tie this up. I want you to see something about eternity. See? Moses on top of Mount Sinai in eternity, you understand, seeing the Son of Man, and there's conversation about a tabernacle. See? John on the Isle of Patmos, on top of that mountain, in the cloud on Yahweh's day, or the day of eternity, seeing that Son of Man and describing the tabernacle. Peter, James, and John at that transfiguration on a mountain. He was in the light. And then there's discussions about the tabernacle. And so you've got Paul on the road to Damascus, fall out right on the ground, and he sees that great light. and speaks to someone who was supposed to be dead. He can't die, but people thought he was dead. Do you understand? So that, Paul, a lot happened with Paul. He was struck with blindness. But bottom line is, when he was done, he went out and preached. He was told to go out and teach the people. Same thing our founder was taught. Now I want you to see Moses was in eternity. Peter, James, and John in eternity. John on the Isle of Patmos in eternity. Paul on the road to Damascus in eternity. Here, seeing the Son of Man in the tabernacle, Son of Man in the tabernacle, Son of Man in the tabernacle. Paul, the Son of Man, and when he went out and taught according to the law and the prophets, which is lined up according to the tabernacle. I want you to see that all of these folks were someplace. They were all in the same place. Eternity, 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 eternity. They were at the same place. Dare I say the same time. All seeing the same thing. And our founder was taken up to the exact same place. I want you to see there's not a bunch of visions. There's one vision. One. And he'll bring you up to see it. In eternity. He doesn't have to keep showing the same thing over and over. Because they're all in the same place at the same time. So thanks, Carl. I took all your time.
I'm happy.
Thank you, Dr. Emily. Our next speaker will be the president of the Oceanside branch, Dr. Carl Emler.
Leave it to the secretary of the Oceanside branch to declare the titles.
It's the proper way.
We do. Let's go back to the scripture reading for a moment. I had no idea what Dennis wanted me to pick a scripture reading. He yelled at me when I got in, and I got all nervous and scared. So, this 32nd chapter of Deuteronomy, I just recently read because I was reading the 31st chapter of Deuteronomy, and I just kept on reading because it talks about Israel being charged. And Dennis had worked with the blessings and the curses, and this is Moses charging Israel. And he put it in a song. Mm-hmm. See? And so the 32nd chapter of Deuteronomy is a song that was to Israel. And, and nowadays, when you go to any kind of a church or a synagogue, they preach with some kind of a sing-song
Yes.
way. Oh, the Lord God said. They go on like that. And you're not learning anything, but they have this cadence.
Right.
And they do the same thing when they read the Hebrew Scriptures. There's a cadence to it. Mm-hmm. There's a song to it. Do you understand? And that song is not this song. Mm-hmm. You understand? Yahweh had this as a song because the way Yahweh has made your mind, the way Yahweh has made your brain, is that if you couple words with a cadence, you'll remember them. Mm-hmm. That's why you remember jingles from commercials forever. That's why we remember songs from when we were from 50, 60 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't remember rote things, you know. So Yahweh has two parts of your brain working. And one is, I'll say like this, the logical part, which are the words, and the other is the intuitive or the artistic part, which is the melody.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the law and the prophets,
Yeah.
because that's how Yahweh works. He works with the law and the prophets. And so this thing is a song, and it's not only the words. I'm talking about the 32nd chapter of Deuteronomy. It's not only the words, but it's the cadence. And what I mean by cadence is it's the transitions. Israel goes through these transitions that you read about here, where Yahweh has done great wonders for them and brought them up out of Egypt and clothed them and fed them and then brought them into Canaan's land. And in Canaan's land, there was great wealth already established, houses that they did not build. And, you know, they showed the fruit being this really, you know, they had to carry, men had to carry this on staves, the grapes and stuff like this. And what Moses told Israel that they were going to do. See, my mind is on what Diane has said, and it's really in the very beginning of this 32nd chapter. But I want to just bring this point up, because what Diane did in showing the way these visions are all the same. All right. She has distilled the doctrine as the dew, or she has distilled, let me just say this, really she's distilled the law and the prophets as the dew. Because what is a distillation process?
Purifying.
And how does distillation work?
I'm not sure.
Nice eyebrow. I can't do that.
I don't know.
How does distillation work? Does anyone?
Through heat.
It's an evaporative state.
It's an evaporative process. And
that allows things to free from other elements.
right. Now here's what happens. In the distillation process, you have certain things become volatile or turn into a lighter than air at certain temperatures. Alcohol becomes lighter than air at a lower temperature than water. So you can mix water and alcohol together and heat it to the lower temperature. The alcohol comes off and it comes up, and it'll usually, in science, it'll go through tubes that are all swirly like this. Okay? And then at the end, those swirly tubes are surrounded by cold water to condense that you heated. And you can purify alcohol away from an alcohol-water mixture by this process called distillation. Heating, because you know how to get what from what. And for instance, you can take salt water and boil it, and now you know you get steam, and it goes through these curlicue tubes. And on the outside of the curlicue tubes, because it's inside another casing, you put cold water, and then water drips out at the other end. But the salts stay in the other vessel. So you've distilled water from the salts. Now, Deuteronomy 32:1.
Give ear, O ye heavens, and I will speak.
Now, this is how Yahweh speaks. This is it. This is how he speaks. Read.
And hear, O earth, the words of my mouth.
Now, go ahead.
My doctrine shall drop as the rain.
Now, his doctrine is going to drop as the rain. And rain is a distillation process. Because the water comes up from the oceans, forms clouds, and you've seen these pictures in elementary school, see? Forms clouds in the sky and sprinkles down on the land, and then the water rolls off the land and back into the ocean and lakes and goes back up into the sky.
Right.
You understand? And that's a distillation. See, because when it's in the lakes, it's with all the fish and everything else, and the fish aren't dropping for the most part. Sometimes fish do drop out of the sky. There have been Sharknado. We love Sharknado. But the point is that this distillation process gives you water that you can drink.
Yes.
Versus water that's polluted.
Mm-hmm.
Or water that is undrinkable. It doesn't necessarily, see, pollution in our minds, pollution is something that's bad. We're not talking about, in this case, with this process, something that's bad. We're just talking about a distillation process. Mm-hmm. Because look, the lakes and the oceans aren't bad. They serve their purpose to hold the fish and hold the plant life and to provide oxygen for the planet and all this other kind of stuff. But you're not going to drink seawater because it will kill you. Mm-hmm. See? So you need to distill that in order for it to bring life.
Right.
Now he says, Yahweh's doctrine shall drop as the rain and distill as the dew. Read.
My speech shall distill as the dew.
Now his speech, see, shall distill as the dew. Read.
As the small rain upon the tender herb, and as the showers upon the grass. Because I will publish the name of Yahweh, ascribe ye greatness unto our Elohim.
So look, now you got this grass.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And this distilled product, this distillation product, is going to bring life to the grass. And all flesh is as grass.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand? Now look at, we have these scriptures. We have these law and prophets. And there's this question that someone has asked me that I have to spend some time to try to think about how to give a complete or well, just say a good answer. I'm trying to think. It's an answer that would be convincing.
Mm-hmm.
See? And the question arose about the scriptures and where they came from, and how can are they really from God? Are they really from Yahweh? Are they really holy scriptures? Or you look at where they came from. The J papers. Some author used the name. Well, they say Jehovah, so they call it the J papers, but
right.
really use the name Yahweh through it. And then there's these E papers because they used Elohim and not, so they used Elohim and not Yahweh, and that's
right.
why you have God someplace and Lord others, and someplace you have Lord God. And there was a third set of papers, and I forget what they designated them. And when I say papers, I mean these are fragments of things that they found in jars here and there that finally they compiled into the scriptures. You understand? And when they compiled these things into the scriptures, they did not have like everything just easy without. These things were all broken and hard to read, and they had to put pieces into it that would make sense. They had to complete sentences and things like this. I'm talking about where your scriptures came from. And then they turned around, and as Dr. Kinley talked about, I think in the transcript, Dennis, that you're reading, it broke them up into chapters and
That's right.
and verses, and they just broke a train of thought right in the middle. And
Right.
so here you are, therefore, verse 1 and 1. Therefore, it's like therefore, wherefore, and you had to go back and find out whether therefore was connected to. And so these scriptures were put together by people who compiled them in such a way that they would be convenient and not necessarily, they didn't know what these scriptures meant. To these people, these scriptures were ancient literary works that they found, and they were trying to reproduce to the best that they could the content of these. And particularly when you go from the Hebrew scriptures to the translations, whether it's Spanish or German or Italian or English, whatever the translations are, they had to make choices as to what words they were going to translate when they put every single word in your English Bible. They had to make a choice out of a whole lot of choices of what words were going to go in there. And the question is, well, you know, how do they make that choice? Because if you look, we look up words and we go to Strong Concordance in order to get a better understanding for a particular word. See? And so, if you were to look at these scriptures, just like a carnal mind, if you will, see, the question that's been brought to me at some point was, how do you know that there's any validity to the scriptures?
Right.
Given where they come from, how they were compiled, how they've been translated, how they've been, copied all the way down through. And we always do the, whisper in your ear and go all the way around the room, and it doesn't even sound like, and this is just one day. These things were compiled over thousands of years by some people who didn't even know each other, never met, you understand, and compiled these whole things. And we're talking from Genesis to Revelation. Diane just ran a principle about these visions and revelations all coming from the same place at the same time from the law, and I say Genesis because when Yahweh Elohim said, "Let there be light," that came out of Moses' vision. So from Genesis all the way to Revelation, when John talked about a tabernacle and Moses talked about a tabernacle, and in the middle, Yahshua's talking about a tabernacle, and then Paul, when my tabernacle, talks about his body being a tabernacle, refers to his body as being a tabernacle. You have these tabernacles all over the place, you understand, and you turn around and you ask, how do all these pieces fit? See, do they fit? You understand? And the question arises is, did a bunch of men just write this, or were they divinely inspired?
Right.
Okay. And you cannot show that they were divinely inspired by the way that they were written, the way that they were put down, put together after these jars were broken open and these parchments were spread out. See, they'd crack open and break, and they'd have to put them back together again to see what that word was. You understand? None of that can you show was a divine intervention.
Right.
Do you understand? And then when they translate these things, see, then none of that can be shown. See, that the people who translated the King James Bible had God on their shoulder telling them how to do it. None of that is valid. You can assume that, you can say that, you can believe that, you can do anything you want with it, but none of it's proven, none of it's valid, none of it's real. See, as far as someone who is going to say, "Oh, I believe in God because He wrote that." You understand?
Yeah.
But what validates the origin of the Scriptures and what allows you to be able to use the Scriptures and confidently stand firm on your understanding of the Creator based on the Scriptures, see, is if there's a distillation process. In other words, you have to see that from all of this insanity, you understand, this thread do you ever do one of those pictures that looks like a bunch of squiggly lines, and you stare at it and stare at it and stare at it, and you got to get your eyes fixed, all of a sudden, whoop,
There's
a 3D picture. I don't know, have you ever seen those, Jonathan?
Yes.
Yeah. A big 3D, and it's like, I remember the first time I saw one. It was like, what? You understand? But it's embedded in there. But you have to see it a certain way. Your eye, and you can't train your eyes. You just have to do this. All of a sudden, boom, there it is. And then you hold it. You hold it like, you're holding it so you can see, then it's gone again. And now you can bring it back. You understand? So there's a process, as far as these scriptures are concerned, whereby from this two-dimensional description that we give, see, a three-dimensional picture emerges.
Yes.
You
Yes.
understand? And that three-dimensional picture, that's the gospel.
Right.
You
Right.
understand? And we can't preach the gospel like by reading scriptures. Okay? But what we can do, because we've seen this three-dimensional picture, is we can give you the links, the dots. We can give you the follow the dots. See, we can give you this Moses up in a cloud in the day of Yahweh, seeing a tabernacle, see, and seeing seven somethings. Do you understand? And then we got John on the Isle of Patmos, you see, up on the top of a mountain, you understand? In a cloud, you see, and he sees seven somethings, all right? And he sees a tabernacle, and he sees a man. And then you have a lot less information about this one, see, but you have enough to know they've been talking about tabernacles, you understand? And there was a transfiguration of this man, and he was no longer, see, because there was a transfiguration of this man here, you understand? And so then there's a transfiguration of this man here, see, and because that always comes first, and that's why John on the Isle of Patmos saw the man, and that always comes first, see? And now watch, on the day of Pentecost for the Jews, they were down in the basement. And
No.
they were in an upper room. See? Because somehow or another you have to manifest, see, the elevated position.
Right.
Manifested the elevated position. Manifested the elevated position. Manifested the elevated position, you understand? And then they were surrounded by a mighty rushing wind. Isn't that what it says?
Yes.
And didn't Messiah say over in the 3rd chapter of John, the wind blows where it listeth, and you don't know where it's coming from or where it's going to, and so are those who are of the Spirit.
Right.
And this is being up in the Spirit, surrounded by this. Remember, Yahweh's not a cloud. Yahweh is Spirit. So the cloud manifests Spirit. And so in the upper room, then they got to be a mighty rushing wind, see, that filled the room. Because you're in an upper room, you got to have a cloud, you understand? And then fiery tongues. And so Yahweh spoke out of a fiery cloud, and so you're going to have some kind of fiery talking over here. You understand?
Right.
I guess this is Pentecost up here in this upper room. You understand? And so it's exactly the same thing. And what did they do? They came down out of there and they preached the gospel, which is the death, burial, and resurrection of Yahshua the Messiah, which is a description given by the tabernacle that this lamb had to be offered up on this altar of burnt offering. It had to be cleansed. The high priest had to have there had to be a death, burial, and resurrection. See, in the resurrection of that lamb's blood, being the purification of the whole tabernacle all the way up to the most holy place. See, so when they were preaching the death, burial, and resurrection of Yahshua the Messiah, they were preaching the tabernacle.
Right.
Do you understand? My doctrine examples get distilled when the Spirit, see, describes all flesh as this process, understanding, okay, an elevated position. And that's where he understand. He was in the same place at the same time, and when he described having the vision, he said that he was back here with Moses, and he was a part. He said, it was as though I was a part of the mountain.
Yeah.
Now watch. Look where my hand is. Was the vibrations, and it would have been, and if he had not dimmed himself down, he would have gone into insensibility. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means that Moses, see, when he had that first vision in Revelation and he came down here, Moses' face did not shine, that he had to put a veil over his face.
Right.
See? Because Yahweh Elohim had dimmed himself down enough to be able to explain his purpose to Moses. And while he was, now listen, this is what Diane got into. While he was explaining his purpose to Moses, you understand, John was over here hearing it at the same time. You understand? And Peter, James, and John were up here hearing it at the same. See how this cloud's up here? They're up here hearing it. He's over here hearing it. He's over here hearing it. Doc's up in the mountain, up here, he's hearing it. You understand? And when you hear this thing, you understand, you have to be, look at them on the day of Pentecost. They're up there hearing it. He only has to say it once.
Right.
Why? Because it's the day of eternity, where he is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. In other words, in this state, there is no time. There is no now, and by the time we get all the way over here, now there's this. He spoke and it was done. Mm-hmm. And so it was like a flash. Whew!
Yeah.
He didn't break it down. It was an instantaneous. These people had instantaneous experience. You understand? But as far as Israel is concerned, Moses was gone for 40 days and 40 nights. Yeah. Do you understand? But Yahweh didn't. 40 days and 40 nights didn't go by in eternity.
Yeah.
See? It was just Moses came down the same day he went up.
Yep.
See? That's why he was like, what's going on? I just left you guys.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? He did not know what happened to him. Okay? And so these scriptures can only be revealed to be of Yahweh once you see the invisible connectivity or oneness of these scriptures. Mm-hmm. And the creation, I should say. Because the creation works exactly the same way.
Yeah.
You understand? We watched a program called, well, Diane always remembers what it's called, and I never remember what it's called. But the something from nothing, or something is nothing, or I texted Dennis, and so it's in his phone someplace. Do you have it in your phone?
Oh, look.
It's a Amazon Prime thing?
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting everyone go out and watch this, but I just want to make a point about this. And
Everything and nothing.
everything and nothing, that's what it is.
The amazing science of empty space.
The amazing science of empty space. Everything and nothing. Because they were trying to find out if there was nothing. And they go through the beginning of the universe and then what we have in the universe. And the upshot is, for those who have a little bit of background and just read popular science and stuff, they're talking about like dark energy and dark matter and does it even exist and why do we think it exists and all this kind of stuff. But one of the things, and we need to go back and watch this. It's a 2-hour program, and it just as overwhelms you. But one of the things they talk about is in the very beginning of the Big Bang, if you will, at the very onset of it. First of all, they mention what was before the Big Bang, and that's where they say there's nothing. There's nothing, because the singularity is supposed to be, well, what's the singularity in? It's in nothing. So they don't really know, and that's this whole, nothing thing in the title. But anyway, now listen. So they talk about how there's an expansion of this singularity in the first, it was like first 400 whatever, billion years or some full thing. But it was at the period of time before there was light. Mm-hmm. Because we think of the Big Bang as like, light, anything explosion is light. But what they're saying is that there was this darkness. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then all of a sudden there was light.
Yes.
And it wasn't light of stars. It wasn't stars were there and now they made light. This was before there were any stars, before there were any atoms and all the rest of the stuff. There was light. And then from this light, things condensed into clouds, and the clouds condensed into the stars, and that's how you got planets. But light came first. You understand? And it was just amazing to me because, well, let's just distill this for a moment. All right? Because read Genesis 1:1. Thank you, Andrea.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the
He
earth.
sure did.
And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep.
So here's what you got in this first four. That's right, Andrew. You can read more if we get to it. He's fine. What you have in the beginning of this program, or in some point in the beginning of this program, is this process where darkness was upon the face in the beginning. Read it. I've already forgotten what he was quoting.
In the beginning, Yahweh created the heaven and the earth.
So that's the Big Bang. So really, in that undifferentiated energy that was dark, the heavens and the earth was there.
Mm-hmm.
Now look, as soon as the egg drops down, do you understand? Oh my, there's so much about this. Let me just do this real quick because I want you to understand. I'm going to distill a couple of things. You understand? This thing that Diane got into, see, this is the first thing we ever learned.
Yep.
It's the first thing we ever learned. You understand? But now look at, you have the ovaries of a woman. Now, this is going to be confusing because women are outside of men right now because we're separated.
Right.
But with Yahweh Elohim, the woman was in the man. This thing was happening within him. You
Right.
understand?
Right.
And so his ovaries contain all these eggs, right? And an egg pops out. Boom. See? And I want you to know something about this egg. And I mentioned this in Florida, and you need to think about this because we are all in the spirit, we're all the women. And Dennis mentioned this in his class, how we're the women. See? Every single one of us, every single human, ever who was born and whoever will be born, see, was first a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Because the only thing this egg could ever have is the X chromosome. There is no Y chromosome available.
Right.
So everyone started out as a woman. And you started out dead. Now this egg, see, is alive. It's got mitochondria. It's making oxygen and everything. But this thing is dead. In other words, the end is declared from the beginning. If it's not fertilized,
Right.
it's out of there.
Right.
So right now, there's a death sentence on this egg.
Right.
Okay? So the woman comes out under a death sentence.
Yes.
She cannot survive by herself.
Yes.
Period. Do you understand?
Yes.
And so what happens is, see, and here's the way the cartoons, well, I guess they're cartoons. I mean, I'm thinking of who's that? Was it Woody Allen or one of these? The beginning of life, those kind of cartoon things. Talks about, it shows how all the sperm are lifting weights and trying to get strong so they can get there first. And they all these other ones, and the first one gets there, boom, and they get to No, it doesn't work that way. The first sperm to get to the egg never fertilizes the egg.
Right.
Never. Neither does the second one, or the third one, or the 1,000th one, or the 100,000th one. Because this egg, has a really hard shell around it. See? And this sperm comes in, and all the sperm is a little swimming head.
That's right.
That's all it is. There's no mitochondria, there's nothing. It's just all it is the DNA, the head. That's it. Nothing else, except right at the tip, there's a little enzyme. You understand? And this thing butts up into here and it spills out its enzyme, right? And so it makes a little dent in there. And another one comes up, makes another little dent in here. Another one comes up, it makes a little crack in here. Another one comes up. And this egg is surrounded by sperm. See? And each one individually, see, makes another crack and another crack and another crack. And finally, this impervious membrane that was around this woman when she first came out now has become fragile because it's been broken down by all of these hits of enzyme, hits of enzyme, hits of enzyme. And now all of a sudden, the lucky sperm comes. Da, 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 da. Puts in its same amount of enzyme that all these other guys did, but it was just enough to crack that thing open and it comes in. And it puts its DNA in there, which gives it the Y chromosome, not the J chromosome. But I want you to understand, it looks like a J, that chromosome. So the X chromosome, they call it an X chromosome because it's got some kind of structure to it. And this is like just a little dragged piece of DNA. It's not, it's not. It doesn't have a lot of information on it and all the rest of the stuff. But it's the Y chromosome, and that makes this a man. See? And that, though the DNA from that completes this.
Yes.
So it says over in the scriptures, you are complete in him.
Yeah.
You understand? I'm distilling. Do you understand how you can find out that what something says in the scriptures, see, is what happens? And as soon as this happens, you can go online and Google flash of light at the conception of an egg, and it'll pop up YouTube videos of all of a sudden, like a little electrical thing. Do you understand? Because there's a flash of light, see, upon conception. Yeah. So the cartoons, when all of a sudden you get it, a little light bulb goes on.
Yes.
Yeah. See? Oh, ding. See?
It always dings.
Because the principle permeates the creation.
Mm-hmm.
See? So at the beginning of the earth, there's a flash of light, you understand? And it's not the sun, moon, and stars, and that Dr. Kinley talks about. See, this light here is not the light. People go, well, how do you get plants? Well, there was light to begin with, you understand? And then you have to understand, well, wait a minute. Oh, you can't. But you have to understand why the plants came in before the sun, because it doesn't make any sense, see? But the reason why the plants came in before the sun, see, is because the angelic creation, which doesn't have blood in it, and is manifest by the plants that make oxygen, do you understand? And oxygen is the life of the flesh, do you understand? So the spirit gives life to the flesh, right? Now, so anyway, in the 12th chapter of Hebrews, it says we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses. See? And so here we are. My doctrine shall drop as the rain, and my speech shall distill as the dew. We give the physical witnesses, I like the enzyme, but the spiritual principle, see, is what pops out, is what does the job. This is the spiritual principle, you understand? And that makes the difference. But you can't have that without the manifestations of the example. You could not know that these scriptures were really divinely inspired if you didn't have this thread in it with this thread in it with this thread in it with. Do you understand? With the day of with every single one of these, and you go to Ezekiel and find the crazy man with his vision. You understand? But it's still the tabernacle. Right. You understand? And so that forces you to say this. Either these scriptures were divinely inspired or some aliens put these things together. Because it ain't normal. Yep. It's not normal. Right. You understand? And the only way to make this normal is to discard it and say it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
See? And so there's one other process that I want to bring to your attention that I found really interesting, and it just came out in the news. And I don't know, I may have sent you this article, Dennis, as well, because Dennis likes to think he's a physicist. And so I sent him all the physics articles. But it was this physics article talked about that the universe went through a death and came alive again. So that there was a first life and a second life. And the first life was called cold accretion, where it had to do with lower temperatures. And the elements that made these stars up were like oxygen and all these other kinds of elements. And then they kind of went into supernova, and then the second generation was hot. And the elements that predominated that is iron. You understand? So you have the angelic creation, which is cold-blooded and has oxygen. You understand? Which is the first 3 days.
Right.
And then you have the physical creation, which are warm-blooded. See? And they need oxygen. But what is in the blood that allows you to capture the oxygen and utilize it?
The
Hemoglobin.
yeah.
Okay. And it's an iron-containing substance. It's the iron atoms in hemoglobin that form the structure that grabs the oxygen molecules. And so here you have, the plants give you oxygen, and they're cold-blooded, and you're warm-blooded, and you're iron, and you take in, you have two creations.
Yeah.
Just like this proposed creation that they just brand new thoughts they just had in science. Do you understand? But you can see it either from a scientific standpoint, or you can distill from that the spiritual principles that show forth the divine nature of even the creation that we're in. You understand? Because all of it is trying to show forth Yahweh is real. Because you must believe that He is, and that He is a rewarder of them that diligently seek Him. You must believe that. Understand? And if you drop the witnesses, there's no way you can get conception.
Right.
You understand?
Yeah.
There's no way that you can get distillation.
Right.
There's no way you can hear His voice. My doctrine shall drop as the rain, and speech shall distill as the dew. There's no way that you can come into an understanding and a knowledge. So anyway, it's over. Class is over.
I'd like to thank everybody for attending tonight. We hold class here and online every Tuesday and Saturday from 7 to 9. Please stand for the doxology. Now unto Him that is able to keep you from falling and to present you faultless before the presence of His glory with exceeding joy. To the only wise Elohim, our Savior, and Yahshua the Messiah, our Sovereign, belong glory, majesty, dominion, and power, both now and ever. Let us all say, Hallelujah.
It's a wrap.